adventure.
In front of me, I have a collection of candles, a collection called Witch's Brew. Now, Coventry Creation does not promote these products as being novelty or Halloween goods. Instead, they suggest that these candles contain, encapsulate the power, the energy to unlock the magic maker within yourself. And as they say, they are the physical, the emotional, and spiritual representation of change and transformation. And when you're using words like that to describe candles, you better believe you're going to intrigue me. I've been anticipating this moment for quite some time. Some might say it's the season of the witch. So my only question for you is, are you interested to know what that smells like? I don't know why I actually burned that candle out, because I need it. So I'll light that again. So to start, let's eliminate some of these candles burning myself here. Let's start with the original. It's called the original. The others are going to have proprietary names. So let's take a close look at what we're dealing with. On the front here, crafted with magic, Witch's Brew. Circle of magic. Pictured, we have a cast iron cauldron with a viscous, bubbling, oozing purple goo of some kind. We have some fragrance notes. Frankincense, myrrh, and mugwort. Strengthen the spirit and enlighten the soul to energize and empower any witch's spell craft. And then underneath that we have a little excerpt to give some context behind this fragrance. By water, earth, fire, and air, this spell be strong, my intention fair. By the Lady and the Lord, in sacred space, my magic is poured. Brew, brew, my power grow. On a witch's prayer, my power flow. So we're given quite a bit of information. I do want to point out real quick, as you probably can see, this is a pillar candle. There is no vessel, there's no glass. It is wrapped in some cellophane at the moment and has a paper label. But this is 100% paraffin wax. And when you have a pillar candle, it's so that it can hold its form. There's always a higher ratio of wax to oil. So usually you have a difficult time smelling pillar candles cold. However, this is highly, highly aromatic. But I really, really need to know what this smells like in its melted state. So we're going to break out the aroma prison. We're going to take 5 grams of Witch's Brew, melted down inside of a mason jar, so that we're trapping, that we're locking the fragrance inside of a vessel so that we can evaluate the fragrance, the aroma of this candle in its volatilized, in its melted state. So what we need to do is trim off 5 grams of this candle. And to do that, we have our digital scale. I just have an ordinary coffee filter. I'm going to put on the digital scale. And I'm just going to dive right into this candle, cut off 5 grams. What? Yeah, it would be kind of upsetting to ruin a brand new candle, right? Well, it just so happens that I do have Witch's Brew in a brand new, hot off the press votive as well, right there. Now I want to make sure that I'm getting deep inside the candle too, not just the outer circumference, just in case any of those oils have been exuded. We want to get the oils that are trapped deep inside. 5 grams. Let's take our vessel. All of it is going into the jar. Seal the jar. All we have to do now is drop this into hot water, not boiling water, But a pot of hot water on the stove should only take a few moments. Down below here I have an electric kettle that will certainly get the job done. It's incredibly hot though, so be careful. So there it is, can you see it? That is going to be 5 grams of melted witch's brew. So the only thing left to do now is to break this open, give it a sniff. I'll share my thoughts, my notes, my initial impression of this fragrance. Keep in mind, I have smelled this candle cold before, but I have never burned this candle before. Oh man, that is intense. For 5 grams of wax, that is very intense. So immediately I'm hit with very pretty smells, like coniferous tree smells. Juniper berry, a lemony pine, rosemary, cypress. Big on clary sage. Clary sage is unlike culinary sage. It has a lime tart aromatic profile. Speaking of that, it's fruity too, like a fruity raspberry hibiscus tea. Maybe even a little bit of jasmine in that tea. Okay, so now that I'm allowing a lot of those top notes to blow off, I'm getting deeper, darker, thicker, more resinous notes. And what's really coming through the most is myrrh. And if you're unfamiliar with the scent of myrrh, just think of like thick, dark molasses, root beer, black licorice, good and plenty candies, star anise, fennel seed. And the way you can always spot myrrh compared to things like licorice root is that it almost always has this dusty, smoky aroma with a trace of latex or even leather. Yeah. And most of the time, whenever we find myrrh, we find frankincense, and this is no exception. Frankincense is also a tree resin, but it's not nearly as rich as myrrh. It has that pine citrusy thing that I was discussing, and I'm sure that what I was smelling before is largely in part because of that frankincense. And it almost has a tanginess to it. Think of like balsamic vinegar. But on the flip side, there is an austere nature to frankincense, like old antiqued wood. And just as a reminder, frankincense, myrrh, the classic combination that we find in Christian churches, the incense. So this is provoking those images of the rickety old church, the ancient structure, the smell of that incense embedded into the walls, the furniture, the floorboards. And I don't know how else to describe this. And don't take this the wrong way. Be excited about this. There is an herbaceous side to this candle that I cannot deny. But it is a very specific kind of herbaceousness. It's almost swamp-like. It's dirty. It's of the earth. Fertile and moist and wet and saturated. Mossy. And as I've already stated, Coventry Creation says that this candle is in part constructed with frankincense, myrrh, and mugwort. Mugwort, I have to be honest, is something I was not very familiar with. So I did have to do a little bit of research. Now, mugwort is a noxious weed, but it's been used for thousands of years for medicinal purposes. This is a mugwort that's been harvested this past season. So what I did was I took that mugwort and steeped it in hot water, just like you would a cup of tea, but highly concentrated. And when I smelled it, I recognized some familiar aromas. It reminded me of marjoram and Thai tea. It has a tea quality to it, like you would imagine, but definitely very herbaceous and of the earth, like you just pulled it off the forest floor. And although Witch's Brew, this candle, doesn't state it on the back, it's very well known that this contains dragon's blood. Dragon's blood. If you don't know, yes, that is a real thing. And it's a pretty in-depth topic, but it's not blood. It's, to keep things simple for now, it's usually a proprietary blend from producer to producer of plant resins. And for this candle in particular, it just does add to that overall resinous smell. So let's try to wrap this all into one package. Imagine massive plumes of incense smoke in an old decrepit cabin with warped wood. In the fireplace you have a pot, a cauldron with herbs and highly fragrant exotic spices. Outside you have dried hay, sweet pine. You have that misty swamp covered in shrubs, dark amber. I'm telling you, if this doesn't remind you of a witch's cabin in the woods, I don't know what will. Foreboding, yet spellbinding, that is for sure. This is a special candle. Witch's Brew by Coventry Creations, the original scent. There it is. Let's move on. Next on the list, let's check out this candle right here, Witch's Purse. So on the front, very similar format, only instead of the words Circle of Magic, we have Cash in Pocket. And pictured, we indeed have what seems to be a purse. On the back side, bergamot and date invite the sweetness of life as they release the tensions that block the manifestation of prosperity and clear the fears that can destroy abundance. Whew. Underneath that, a little bit more context behind the candle. By earth, by air, by water, by fire, wealth of coin, in magic I now sire. The fears, the blocks, and other unknowns are cleared by maiden, mother, and crone. By horn and hoof the Lord will bless. Fill my pockets with riches free of stress. That's heavy stuff. Let's melt this up. So as you can see there, we have 5 grams of melted witch's purse. Let's jump right into this one. Wow. Is it possible that this is more intense than the last candle? Immediately I'm being hit with really pretty florals. Floral musk. I can't help but think about dried up, decaying bouquets of carnations. And musky like talcum powder. But here's the thing, balancing all of that out is a bright citrus, bergamot, but it's way in the distance. And it's almost masked by the florals, but it does a tremendous job contrasting those big musky notes. I can't help it. I gotta say, almost like a lime candy. And I can definitely see the date. Honestly, I probably, if they didn't say it on the back, I probably wouldn't go there. And definitely other florals at play here. Lang Lang, which is one I always want to say, jasmine and geranium. And some herbaceousness. One that I can pinpoint easily is basil, but something else that I'm thinking of. So I say this quite often. A lot of the times when we find lime in a scented candle or a fragrance, you also find eucalyptus. The two of them really work together and enhance one another. Really, the eucalyptus builds the authenticity of the citrus lime note. And let me just throw in one more floral, dried lavender. And also, now that this is starting to blow off a little bit, that date from before is coming through more and more. And as you can see, this has started to it's completely solidified. But that dry down is allowing those bass notes and even some of the heart notes to show themselves a bit more. I'm picking up on a fluffiness, a fluffy vanilla, yes. And some woodiness, sandalwood for sure. And let's go with tonka bean. Very interesting, deep, complex candle as well. This one really paints a portrait. You know, I think of that witch's purse, that moth-eaten fabric stained with stale perfume, that floral musky perfume. Inside you have those decaying flowers, perhaps you know, homemade lozenges like lime herbaceous lozenges. You know, this is like something that once smelled beautiful but has dwindled away with age. This smells like a witch's purse. This could also be a witch's closet. This could be witch's bathroom. It has all of the appropriate aromas to be either one of those as well. You know, also a fortune teller's wooden horse-drawn carriage. You know, the walls inside lined with old linens, shelves with mason jars and medicinal bottles of God knows what, but it's so old and it smells mystical. You know, it's even provoking the idea, like the crystal ball, you know, Madame Leota, the Haunted Mansion, Disneyland, or, you know, Love Potion number 9 style. The Wolfman and the Talisman medallion. That's taking me back to all of those pieces of fiction. But with all of that said, Witch's Purse, spot on name for this fragrance. Let's move on. What do we have next? Very vibrant, saturated, blue-colored paraffin wax. This one entitled Evil Eye. On the front, once again, crafted with magic, Witch's Brew. This time we see spiritual protection. Pictured, we have a human skull. On the back side, juniper and rose penetrate the senses to create a ward of protection for you and yours. And some words of context below. With strength of will I weave this spell, though sight, sound, touch, and smell, earth, water, air, and fire, a web of protection this magic does sire. By the Lady and the Lord I cast this impenetrable ward. Alright. I'm intrigued. How about you? Let's melt 5 ounces of this up. There it is. 5 grams of melted Evil Eye right there. Let's do this. And as the candle states, rose for sure, but there's some other floral notes happening here. Very pungent floral notes. Pungent's not a bad word. Finally, I don't get to say citrus. There is a brightness, there is a tartness here, but it's not necessarily something I want to classify as being citrusy. There is a sour note here, which, talk about a contrast. Floral, glamorous, deep, round, rich, rose floral note with, I would classify it as something like malic acid in the powdered form. Think of sour candies. We've all had sour candies. We've all smelled sour candies. Even when you just smell the candy, you can perceive that when you taste that candy, it's going to be sour. And that's kind of what's happening here. There's something else I'm getting, but I'm going to save that to the end. Let's just jump over that and let's talk about other things. That juniper berry, absolutely. We could even say pine sap or pine terpene. In fact, juniper berry, used all of the time in gin distillation. I could, if someone gave this to me and said this was a gin, I could believe it. A base note of a sandalwood. Let's talk about this other thing that I was skipping over. There is certainly a medicinal quality to this fragrance. Now, just put it out of your mind for a moment, that could possibly be a bad thing. And when I say medicinal, you know, I'm thinking about like when you open up a fresh box of Band-Aids or medical supplies, you know, when you go to the dentist's office, the gloves, not latex, but, you know, that kind of powdery substance that you find on medical materials. That contrast of rose, you know, something that we associate with luxurious moments, you know, weddings, Valentine's Day, when we stay at gorgeous suites and amazing hotels, contrasted with something that's a little bit off, a little bit funky. Perhaps that medicinal aroma could be the addition of camphor, something like that. Maybe some eucalyptus. But I'm telling you, the more I smell this, the more I'm getting that urinal cake or disinfectant that we find in public buildings, restrooms. Very, very bold choice. Very interesting. Yeah, there's a funk. There's a definite funk here. Not just the medicinal. There's, like, I'm starting to now get a little bit of topsoil. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of funky funk. A little bit of maybe like mushroom earthiness. There's this polar opposite, this competing, conflicting, luxurious, floral, bright, piney, pine sap, juniper berry meets a calamity of odd, funky, medicinal, and earthy aromas. That is strange. That is strange for sure. But remember, strange for me is good. I love bold choices. But let me tell you, this is a peculiar one for sure. Evil Eye by Coventry Creations. This is one you really should check out of pure curiosity. And if you do, please let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you discover anything that I didn't talk about, or if you feel like I was off on something. But definitely interesting concept for sure. Power up your magic. Dragon's blood. We see here pictured 2 red dragons. On the back, dragon's blood, a resin from China, the East Indies, and South America. Comes from some of the Earth's oldest trees. This resin brings in the wisdom of the ancients to help define and empower your spell. By air, fire, water, and earth, I craft this spell on heart and hearth. I call forth vitality and ancient force. My dragon awakens to find its course. My spell complete, my magic fair, my word strong, and my witch's prayer. You know, I really hope that I'm not like casting spells willy-nilly here. I really, you know, I have a busy week, and I'd really hate to be dealing with like 4 spells now that I've just cast upon myself. Let's melt this up and see what we have. Alright, here we are. 5 grams of melted dragon's blood inside of our jar. Are we ready? I'm ready. Let's do this. Wow. I just burnt a little bit of my hair. That's a big one. That is a big one. So like I said before, Dragon's Blood usually is a proprietary blend from producer to producer of different resins. And this is very resinous, but there are other aromatic things happening as well. Finally, a little bit more spice. Relatively, there's much more spice happening here than what we found in the previous 3 candles. A little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of nutmeg. I want to say nutmeg, but think about that warmth of the baking spices. Perhaps some exotic spices as well. You know, cracked black pepper, chai tea, if you want to think about that. Very exotic. And I'm already starting to get a concept. I'm going to try to not let that control my evaluation, though. Citronella, again. There's citronella here. I love the smell of citronella. And what's great is I really like what it's doing in this candle. Because it's working, it's contrasting with a spiciness in this candle. And I don't mean baking spices this time. I mean like a spicy hot spice. But I'll talk about that in a second. Citronella, so that citrus note, building on that, there is neroli, or at least I'm picking up on what I think is neroli. Neroli is used all of the time in bath and body products, cosmetics. If you're not familiar, just think of orange blossom, right? It's this orange, zesty, floral aroma, a good amount of fruitiness, floral, herbaceousness certainly coming through too in the form of sage. Oh yeah. And now that this is starting to really solidify, yeah, I mean it's a little not quite solidified, but getting the base notes of cedarwood and patchouli. Patchouli is just going to add more to that herbaceous, it's going to add more to that earthiness, it's going to add more to that woodsy smell. Spanish olive oil. If you're not familiar with Spanish olive oil, or you know, even if you just are familiar with good quality olive oil, if you've ever smelled it, you know that it has a bite to it. It has a spice, you know. Sometimes it's a little grassy, sometimes it smells a little bit like hay, but it's got grip, and it has this cracked black pepper spiciness to it. And I'm definitely getting a little bit of that in here. Ginger root. I use ginger all of the time when I make beverages. And once again, regarding the resin, frankincense. It adds that brightness, like we said before, but it also contributes to some smokiness. There is a smokiness here, which is totally appropriate for this concept, right? Dragon's blood. And yes, like I said, there's a spicy, hot quality here, but it's not like I smell like a jalapeno or a hot sauce. I really can't find in my mind what would be adding to that spice. It could just be the baking spices, the cracked black pepper, and all of the other exotic resins, you know, it's making me feel a little bit warm just smelling it. Could also have to do with all of the candles that are surrounding me at this moment. And I'd really be neglecting an important detail if I didn't say tea. So everything that I've said so far, imagine we ground all of that up and we steeped it in tea form. So what this is painting in my mind is a chamber in a castle with plush furniture, a roaring fire and a massive fireplace. Maybe in that fireplace, that's where we have that tea steeping. And with the exotic nature, with that olive oil profile, and the fact that this is called Dragon's Blood and is in a collection called Witch's Brew, the concept that I'm starting to put together in my mind is the idea of this warrior about to fight, to battle a dragon, or dragons, plural. And he is sent to this chamber in the castle to be anointed with oils before battle, served tea to bathe by the seductive, exotic witch to prepare him for the fight of his life. Or maybe just perhaps, maybe he won the battle. I'm really going off on a tangent here, but I love when this happens. This is, for me, what, you know, these candles are all about telling a story. This could mean something completely different to somebody else, but I kind of like what has been established in my head. Dragon's Blood by Coventry Creations. So let's get one last look. So here they are, the Coventry Creations Witch's Brew collection. Like I said, these are not Halloween goods. These are not novelty candles. They're not made for Halloween. The folks who construct these candles are obviously very passionate about what they do. I can tell based on the craftsmanship, but also the fact that they've been doing this for 25 years. Check them out if you're looking to expand what you burn, expand your personal world of aroma. These candles have the full potential to take you to some mystical, spellbinding places. So as I always say, thank you for joining me on this evaluation today. I'm not kidding. I've been anticipating taking a very close look at these candles for almost a couple of years now, and I'm so glad to finally cross it off my list. Once again, thank you for joining. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, think about doing that. That's it for me today. I will be seeing you soon, but until then, be good.